In Scotland, new research has revealed that the number of people with mental health problems assessed as homeless or at risk of becoming homeless has almost doubled since 2013-14. So this is research from Scottish Labour that shows that measures introduced during the pandemic to prevent homelessness had a limited impact on the number of people with mental health problems who were considered homeless.
Yes, and these figures are worse if you just look at people who have mental health conditions. And for those people, that figure for homelessness or at risk has risen by 90%. And mental health is now one of the biggest causes of homelessness. So again, let's try this. Joining us is Conservative MSP for Lothian, Jeremy Balfour. And I'm going to make sure he's on the screen before I start chatting to him. Thank you, Jeremy. I can see you there. These figures are very shocking, actually, especially when it relates to mental health. A rise in 90% and almost doubling. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, good morning, well, thank you for the invitation. I mean, I think the issue is simply the Scottish Government have taken their eye off the ball in regard to the funding of mental health issues, whether that's within hospitals, whether that's within the community. And we're now seeing, sadly, the fruits of that as people have been let down by the system and are now falling through the net, which should be there to support them and to make sure that they get the help that they require in regard to dealing with the different issues that they have.
Everyone in scheme in England has received wide cross-party support and has been praised to a significant degree with helping people from all causes of homelessness to find shelter and accommodation during the pandemic. Why hasn't the same thing happened in Scotland?
Well, I think if you go back 12 months, it did work. It worked well. There was a good relationship between the different sectors. But as we've moved on and as funding and as priorities have changed, that has fallen through. And too often people are put in inappropriate accommodation, whether that is bed and breakfast, whether that is in a room with other people. And key to this is given the professional support that people need, whether that is through the third sector or through local government or through the NHS. And too often we're still working in silos, so people talk about homelessness, but we don't talk about all the other services that people need to give them that protection.
So I suppose you're asking for more communication between different service providers, but potentially more support from the Scottish Government as well, more funding perhaps?
Well, I think we do need more funding, and I think we need that funding directed at the right individuals. We have seen the third sector playing a massive role over the last 18 months, and yet third sector funding is being cut and often is very insecure. People don't know if it's going to be coming forward again. So what I would like to see the Scottish Government committing to give homelessness charities 3-year funding so that they can plan the services that they can do and allow the professionals to get in and to do the work without government interfering.
Now, we haven't really heard much about this crisis in Scotland over the last year, despite an almost doubling of the number of cases, as we've been saying. Why haven't we heard much about this? Why hasn't the SNP stepped up to the plate on this?
Well, again, I think we hear again the SNP like to spin everything. We see over and over again that they set themselves targets, whether that's in regard to the vaccine, whether that's in regard to homelessness, and then they simply fail on those targets. And sadly, they are not being held to account by the media. And we as politicians need to step up more and show that this government is full of rhetoric, but in practice they are failing the most vulnerable people within our society.
Now, of course, you're a Conservative member of the Scottish Parliament. This was a report that was put forward by the Labour Party in Scotland today. Are you finding that you're working with the Labour Party now, of course, under their new leader? Is there cooperation that can happen between unionist parties to highlight issues like this?
And we made it very clear that we will work with anyone who will come up with solutions. I think we need to move away from simply trying to say we've got all the answers. We need to work with other parties. We need to work with the third sector. We need to work with local government. Because when we're talking about these issues, we're talking about individuals who are affected. And so we will work as a party with anyone that would drive forward the agenda. But sadly, the Scottish Government seem to kind of think that they know best. And as we've seen from these figures, that simply is not the case.
Well, Jeremy Balfour, Conservative member of the Scottish Parliament, thank you very much for joining with us on GB News this morning.